Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Plaistow's Board of Selectmen meeting for a public hearing for a draft water ordinance. Today is July 20th, and I'd like to call this meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. Beth, may I have a roll call, please, first?
Select Chair, Ms. Hart.
Here.
Select Vice Chair, Mr. Tallien.
Here.
Selectman Mr. Kishka.
Here.
Selectman Mr. Glenn.
Here.
Selectman Mr. DeRoche.
Here.
And please note for the record, Town Manager Mr. Pearson is here, as well as Attorney Mr. Rockingham. We have Mr. Forbes from Underwood Engineering, and we have Mr. Moore from the Planning Board.
Thank you so much. Would everybody please rise to the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. So before we start our public hearing, I'd like to have a motion on the floor to approve the meeting minutes from our last meeting, which was June 29th.
Make a motion to approve the potable water meeting minutes from June 29th, 2020.
All right, thank you. And may I have a second?
Second.
All right. And there was some discussion with regards to a little bit of verbiage that needed to be changed, and I believe Beth received that change on it. So,
Should we announce?
yes, please announce it
Page
as,
3,
yes.
Item number K should say $5.24 per 100 cubic foot or feet versus per cubic foot.
It makes the cost much better.
Less than a penny a gallon.
Yes. All righty, so we'll get that straightened out, and we'll check that out. So if there's no other discussion on the meeting minutes, may I have a vote, please? All's in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Okay, so the motion carries 5-0-0. So I will now start our public hearing at 6:32 p.m. So I would like to invite any members of the public who would like to speak and ask questions regarding this ordinance. If people are concerned about coming actually to Town Hall, I believe there is a number that you can reach us at, and I think it's at the bottom of your screen. So please feel free to call us with questions that you may have. So I guess without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Forbes, since we don't have anybody physically present at our public hearing. So go ahead, sir.
Thank you.
Somebody's coming. All right. Somebody is coming? Yeah, but he's not. All right. All right. Yes. Okay. Oh, and I do have someone coming for public hearing, I believe. Yes? No? Reporter. Reporter, okay. All right, come on and have a seat. All right, I'm sorry, Jean, go ahead.
I thought what I would do is just do a brief overview, kind of an executive summary. I'll go through each of the 25 sections and just, talk very briefly about what we have here. We've talked about many of these policy issues in depth, but I think for the general public, at this point, I'm aiming my discussion more towards identifying the things that people might be interested in knowing about. So Section 1 is always important, definitions. I think in this area, we want to draw attention to key definitions such as what an owner is, what a customer is, how they vary. Later on, as we talk about responsibilities, those distinctions are important. So I think a reader should understand those. Sections 2 and 4, there's not a lot to say here about those. They're pretty standard aspects of how do you apply, where's the service area, and generally outlining the authorizations that are being brought forth with this ordinance. Oh, and I should mention, for those of you with a copy, you may want to just follow along, and you'll see as I go through some of these key issues. They get a little more interesting than these here. Section 5, application for service. I think the important points here, again, are the procedures for application. This is the first point where we're defining the Merrimack River Source Development Charge, how that impacts The rates, we've talked a lot about, but it needs to be understood, I think, by the customers of the community, that there is a responsibility here. It's a one-time fee that is associated with your connection and the allocation of that capacity. And as it speaks to allocation of capacity, recognize, again, as we've talked about a lot with this group, that there is limited capacity, and it is within your purview to define how that capacity is utilized. So this section here sets forth the initial statements about fees and the rights to set them and how these charges are determined. The next section, Section 6, service pipes, this really defines the responsibilities of the utility and of the customers. Talks about installation of those connections, how work on bringing a line from your main to property is financially the burden of the customer, not of the utility. And that there are installation specifications that are required that are set forth on how the technical aspects of those connections take place. There's also a note of the various requirements of installation as it relates to the period of time when this can be done and such, so to avoid emergencies and issues like that. If I'm going too quickly, feel free, but I'm going to try to make this like 10 minutes or less. Section 7 relates to the use of private mains. It allows private mains. Private water mains sometimes happen on larger properties where they might distribute to multiple buildings. Again, as stated in the prior section, the responsibility for these private infrastructure is the customers. And this, again, refers primarily to the water mains themselves, also to some extent the meters that are also allowed. Section 8 just defines the liability, if you will, responsibility for any interruptions. If you're a customer, it isn't a guarantee that you'll always have service. Things happen where at times you might have to interrupt it, and this sets forth in your ordinance that the responsibility is not with the town to provide for any compensation related to interruption of service. Section 9 relates to the water main extensions that might occur. Again, these can be done at the expense of customers who might wish to bring a line that would eventually be turned over. This is different than a private line. It would be turned over to the town. It must meet your specification. It must be done per town approval. It would require that if you're maybe developing a property or maybe there's an existing property, that extension would be approved and done per your specs. Section 10 again talks about the maintenance of the plumbing and the fixtures that are privately held on the customer's property. Again, making clear that the responsibility is with the customer and not with the utility.
Jean, I just wanted to interrupt you about Section 9. Obviously, the planning board is going to have to coordinate with the select board with respect to site plans and things like that. So is that something that, Tim, can I put you on the spot and ask you, do we need to develop some ordinances for that prior to all of this stuff coming on board? Come up, please. I know, I'm sorry to do this to you, but I just thought of this.
I just wanted to jump in here and, we need that speaker, Jane. It's for the people.
Sorry.
So the way that this conceptually would work is normally in a town where you have a town engineer, it would go to the town engineer that would look at the plans that were being proposed, and there would be a set of specifications that the town would have for the type of pipe and all of the
Okay.
engineering specifications on there. So I think one thing we have to look at when a project comes in with a proposal for somebody to put pipes in the road for a private project is that they meet the town specifications,
Okay.
which means that we would ask for a third-party review by an engineering company, albeit it would probably be Underwood because
Okay.
they've already done this portion of the project. We wouldn't want to have somebody else do a peer review of that project that wasn't looking out for the town's best interest. So in lieu, the short answer is that if we don't have a town staff person with that PE for the specifications, we would look for a third party to review.
All right.
But there would be a set of specifications that would be available to the people that were drawing up a set of
To the
plans to
developer,
know what
yeah.
it is that the town expects.
Okay,
And
obviously,
one of
yeah.
the things that we are talking about is how to lay out the town in the future so that we don't have conflict with
Yeah.
the natural gas pipes that are in the ground or some electrical utility poles, or even if you wanted to look out further, which would be the sewer. But sewers tend to be down the middle of the road.
Yep, so that's not an
So we are aware of all of these things that are kind of happen concurrently now. What has happened, though, is because water wasn't really mapped out to this point, the utilities, the natural gas pipes, just picked the easiest route, went on the easiest side of the road. They stayed away from the telephone poles side of the street. And realistically, the telephone pole side of the street is where you want your natural gas, because you don't want to be digging down 6 feet for water pipes next to a pole, because then you have to stabilize the poles when you're doing it. So there's a reconstruction going on now in parts of the town to make way for this project to do that. So it's a long-winded answer, but we would handle it in-house with a third-party review. That's the short answer.
All right, and this also needs to tie into the master plan that the planning board just kind of put together too, so that has to be,
Well, they
Worked in
would
conjunction.
look at parts of town that they had a master plan to potentially expand not only water, but, any future service.
right.
But we would have a town set of specifications, which we've already talked about, so that we could pass those on to the developer so that they could match up with what the town expects.
all right, okay, thanks.
Tim, did you want to talk further about that? Because I know you and I did talk about that.
Yeah, really don't have too much to add. This would all be in our subdivision regulations, which can be changed,
Okay.
like a public hearing like tonight.
Okay,
So the plan would be to insert information saying that any new water mains that were being installed would have to conform with the town specifications, whatever the legal, whatever the official
Right.
document and title is. And I think we'd also probably add in there that the plans need to be reviewed by, however we're going to make that phrase,
okay, yeah,
water commissioners or utility or whatever.
okay,
Both the plans and the installation would be,
okay.
need to be approved.
I'm just making sure and concerned that everything dovetails together and there's no conflicting information with boards and committees. So if we can do that, that's great. Okay,
And
thanks
I
for
think
your
that's-
help. Thank
yeah,
you.
Pretty easy step. for the
You
planning
say you. Yeah, you think that's easy. Not so much for us. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you. I'd also like to add, you probably remember those big fat books that we gave you with a whole lot of stuff in it. There is an example of specifications from another town for these kind of activities. And as Mark said, we've talked a bit about it, but that would be the next shoe to drop, so to speak, for the town to actually adopt technical specifications to be shared. And you do have an example in your booklets.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Where did I leave off? I think maintenance of plumbing, again, this was just the statements relating to responsibility of customers for their own plumbing and activities. Meters, this goes in more detail about the issues of metering. Meters are generally owned and maintained by the utility. These are something that will be installed on people's individual property, but you retain ownership. You retain access rights to go to those meters. It does allow for private meters, but you really have no part of that. If somebody wants to have an internal meter to break up how things are utilized, water is utilized on their property, that's up to them, and this does allow for that. So it goes into those kind of details about meters and just clarifies and makes sure that you have access and ability to get in and service those meters which you will own. Uses of water, again, defining responsibilities of customers and utilities responsibility. States no bypassing of around meters, which would be an obvious fraudulent or illegal activity, and so these are setting that format for that. Requires, Section 13 just clarifies a requirement for notification if there's a property ownership transfer. Keep in mind, going back to definitions, that you might have a customer you're dealing with, but the property owner is a different entity.
Right.
You need to know who the property owner is. Section 4, backflow prevention. This is actually a very detailed conversation about some technical aspects of backflow prevention. It's a responsibility of the customer to have that. There is testing requirements, and there are subsequently generally fees associated with testing if the utility chooses to do that. And we've talked about some of those miscellaneous fees. This would be one that would be the responsibility of the property owner to have tests.
Is backflow
period.
always in the facility, or I thought backflows were where the water was connected at the street?
No,
Not
it's in the,
always,
it's in the
Right,
building,
right,
yeah,
it is.
yeah. Yeah, it is. Section 15 talks just about some fairly obvious prohibited uses, no tampering, and it sets forth for the first time in the ordinance capability of assessing a civil penalty. Section 16 is about inspections. It gives you the authority and ability to, within reasonable notice, to have access and to inspect service pipes, mains, meters, et cetera, and whatnot in a building. Trespassing, we were all at that site today, but in the future, that might be trespassing if some people were to be there. And this section 17 outlines the prohibition of trespassing on any of the facilities owned by the town's water utility, include the pump station on East Road or any other facilities. Section 18 talks a bit about the utility rights and liabilities. Again, things here are specified with regard to, in accordance with state law, the rights to restrict usage and improper use. And again, it clarifies the fact that the utility is not responsible for maintenance and disruptions of water service. Section 19, discontinuance of service. It seems like a trend. This is awfully, again, coming up, but it's important to note again that you have the right to discontinue service. This specifies more in detail about how you do that with notice and without notice. There are certain criteria, certain reasons that are specified here when you can do it without notice and when you can do it with notice. And you have to fall within one or the other to discontinue service. It also talks about the technical aspects of restoration of service, being able to hook up again or to resume service. Section 20, billing and deposits, rate schedules to be adopted. I'll talk briefly about that at the end of the ordinance here, but again, the board is allowed to set rates. There are no non-payment provisions in this section. Again, access to read meters, which is the basis of your invoicing, is described here in the billing and deposits. So you should be well aware, Mark certainly should be well aware of the non-payment provisions. What happens if somebody has been in arrears for some time? How do you have those notice requirements? They're all spelled out here. Section 21 on hydrants. This just basically prohibits use for anything other than fire service, fire suppression, or uses that are approved by the utility, by the town. So you do have abilities, and there may be cases where you will have some type of use of a hydrant that you want to make an exception for, and this gives you the authority to provide that use. Also mentions, I probably should have had a bullet for this, the fees and costs associated with the use of hydrants. Private fire protection, you do have and will maintain your fire suppression customers where you will be providing that fire suppression flow. This section outlines responsibilities, costs of maintenance and keeping the customer system up to snuff is the responsibility of the customer. Section 23, water hauling. There are times that you may have bulk purchases. Someone may want to fill a tanker truck, and you want to make sure you have provisions about how that's done. This allows it, also specifies a location for where bulk deliveries or bulk water is tapped, and that would be right now, according to the ordinance, at a location, a hydrant near the Public Works garage. The Section 24 talks about violations and penalties, sets forth the authority under RSA 38:26 that authorizes civil penalties up to $10,000 per day. Section 25, rates, fees, and charges, again, just points to the fact that the fees, including the Merrimack River Source Development Charge, are established by the board. And finally, Section 26 talks to the authority of the selectmen to amend this ordinance. So those, in a nutshell, are the 26 sections. I didn't go into great detail of them, but happy to try to answer any questions you might have or the public may have about the ordinance.
Question on private metering. I take it if you have, let's say, an example, let's say a condominium. And let's say we start out as we only meter the water going into the main route going to the condominiums. And then later on, or maybe even early, they choose to put meters to each unit and charge them per an amount. And I can see down the road someday, they say, well, we want you to take over that water line. They don't want to manage it no more. And my concern is if they have used other third-party cheap meters, and then we have to inherit those meters.
Right.
Is there an ordinance, can we specify if they put separate meters, they'd be a certain type of meter?
Well, this makes it clear that you would not be responsible for ever accepting that meter. They may want you to accept it, but you're not going to want to accept a substandard meter. And it's not just the meters. I think this is a very important point that is very likely to come up in the town of Plaistow. Most obvious, an example might be the I can't remember the name of the homeowners association just past Sweet Hill, the tank.
Yeah.
That goes down there. That entire neighborhood is serviced by what I would say is substandard, not meeting AWWA specifications for water mains. They're small. There's no hydrants. There's a system there that would be substandard. Now, you may want to ultimately sell water to that homeowners association. Pennachuck is another example. They do have a standard system. It's very nice, but some of the Pennachuck systems may also become customers of yours. As you sell them water, whether they have a standard or substandard system, those examples are examples where your responsibility stops at your meter where you're selling them water. Now, whether their system is top-notch like Pennachuck or substandard like you know, your condo meter system, or that homeowners association that doesn't have full-size pipes and hydrants in the street, those substandard systems you don't want to accept responsibility for, nor do you want to accept responsibility for a top-notch system that might already have meters spread out in their system. If they've got meters or intend to have meters in the future, they're just not yours. And if the day comes where you want to consider taking over substandard facilities, whether it's meters, pipes, or anything else, that's a discussion where the authority here in this ordinance is very clear. You're not obligated to do that. And I would recommend that a municipality in that situation require that they be brought up to your standards before taking them over.
Yeah. And Greg, you had a question, I believe.
Simple question, is this ordinance, will this become part of the town code, or are things that are not in here have to be taken care of within the town code?
I would ask your attorney to respond to that one.
These are a set of regulations that the board is authorized to adopt and enforce. You don't have to go to town meeting with this. So technically, it doesn't become part of town code, but you probably want to publish it, you know, perhaps put it on the website. When you're done, you'll provide a copy to the town clerk for, you know, included in the town's record keeping.
Okay, so in the town code, there should be no section that this would fall under. This is separate, all by itself.
Well, you could choose to put it there, I suppose, but it is not technically an ordinance that is approved by the voters of the town at town meeting.
So,
I thought the town code could be changed by vote of the selectmen.
they can.
Yes, because the size of your communities
Under
with a certain number
10,000,
of
yeah.
residents can amend if.
No, that's not what I have. The way I said, so changes to the town code can be done by approval by this board. We don't have to go to a warrant article to approve.
No, I understand that. Because you're a town of a certain size, town meeting can confer that authority on you, and it has.
Right.
Yeah, you can put it in the town code if you choose to.
There might be a possibility that the board should discuss perhaps putting this under the water department as opposed to the town code, because you don't want to bury stuff in layers and layers of stuff, but that's a discussion for later board meetings, perhaps. Yeah, all right. Ooh, I have a phone call, hopefully from the public. Let's see. Hopefully it's not somebody trying to sell me insurance. Hello?
Hey, Francie, it's Jim.
Hi.
Want to take questions now or later?
Why don't you, if you're on the phone now, we can take questions now. I'll put you on speaker, okay? All right, so we do have a question. Okay, so you are on speakerphone right now. Can you give us your name and your address, please?
Yes, it's Jim Peck, 206 Oak Ridge Road.
Okay, go ahead, Jim.
Okay, my question is, and maybe you're going to get to this, but the amendment, the last section of the ordinance is amendments. And my question is, when the selectmen can make amendments, but do those amendments have to be approved by town meeting?
No,
No, okay.
no, because we are the water commissioners, so we set the amendments. Is that correct, Attorney?
That's
Yeah,
correct.
okay.
So the original, just a follow-up question, the original ordinance has to be passed next March, right? Or not?
No.
This
No,
ordinance that you're
no,
talking about?
no, we are the commissioners, and we are hopefully going to ratify this ordinance tonight before the end of this public hearing, or after the end of the public hearing.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good night.
Goodbye.
All right. Okay. So, any more questions, board? No? So at this point, is this the point where we put a motion on the floor? Oh, we close the hearing and then put a motion on the floor? Okay, thank you. All right, so if there are no other questions or no other comments, I'm going to close the public hearing at 6:59 PM. And then I would like to have someone put a motion on the floor to ratify this ordinance.
The motion that we ratify the.
Excuse me, sorry.
Madam Chair, we talked about one amendment on page 3, so I would suggest,
Oh, to change that?
Yeah, I
Okay.
would suggest
Yeah,
that
you're
you-
right, okay. So, on page 3 of the final draft,
section 5A,
5A, yeah.
yep, I would strike the word attached, and so that it would, and then insert the words, so it would read with the rate schedule, and then after the word schedule, put in adopted by the board.
So moved.
So I'll make a motion that we ratify the water ordinance, Plaistow water ordinance.
with the
With the
proposed
proposed change.
amendment. Okay, and you're going to second the vote?
Yes.
All right, is there no more further discussion on this? Gentlemen, no? Okay, seeing none, I'll take a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstain? All right, motion carries 500. So gentlemen, we now have an official water ordinance. Yay.
Congratulations.
Yes, long time in coming, I know. Thank you so much for all your hard work, and I also would like to personally thank Tim Moore for reviewing the initial draft and really putting some teeth to this ordinance. Most of these ordinances are boilerplates for a lot of communities, and he just went through it with a fine-tooth comb as well, and just tightened everything up so that, you know, the town of Plaistow is going to be in very good stead, and things are pretty tight, and there's no room for, hopefully, no room for error. Right.
If I may, I wanted to also raise the subject of rates.
Yep,
And,
on our last page, okay.
Mark and I talked briefly about this morning, about, you know, whether or not you might want to adopt this sooner than later, and I'll leave that entirely up to you. But I did want to just mention, remind you of some of the rate discussions we've had in the past. What this slide shows here were our recommendations for consumption charge and a meter charge. I also had, and I can pass these around, it doesn't bode well for being on the screen, but you might recall this
Thank you.
summary of miscellaneous fees as well, that that we had presented. We had presented these as well. Now, this summary, it's kind of hard to read, I maybe should have printed it on a bigger paper, showed some of the neighboring communities and how you compared. But ultimately, in the right-hand column, these are some of the miscellaneous charges. Having thought about it a little bit today, I think maybe this is best at another meeting.
Yeah.
But I'd welcome any comments, and what I thought would be helpful for the board, I probably should have thought ahead for this, is to actually to put this in a format as a rate schedule that you could look at in its entirely, instead of having this information about, you know, comparing communities and such, just flat out show the rates, develop a schedule, and you'll have a single document that can be looked at and said, this is our schedule. But I want to invite any comments and questions so that at your next opportunity to do this, we can have a document for you that is ready for adoption.
I mean, I personally think we need to study some of these numbers a little bit, and I know we've seen it before, but we've seen so many things that I would like another opportunity to review it. And if there are any comments or questions or additions, you could send the questions to Jean so that when we finally get the distilled version of it, it will be with a timely vote. And Greg, you wanted to have a comment?
I think the question, house is transferred or sold, does the water need to be shut off and then turned back on?
Not necessarily. No, in fact, there's fees for this transfer. It's it's a final meter reading when it's done. You close out one and you start the next.
Is it very similar to electric?
Right.
Yeah, so other utilities, yeah, okay.
So it just requires them to request a final reading.
Right, right.
So, gentlemen, are you comfortable with potentially voting on the meter charges and the connection incentives at this meeting tonight? Go ahead, Jay.
Send this in a soft copy too.
Yeah, I can. I certainly can. Before you vote on that or think about that, I would also remind you of some of the questions or policy issues that we talked about prior as it relates to the MSDC charges.
Incentives, yeah.
Basically,
Yep, yep.
these connection incentives, they're not that tied to the prior slide, if you will, but I think it all comes into one conversation, I think, for me anyway. The costs and the incentives that you might want to set up for these hookups. But again, just, they are different, but I just want to remind you of that being kind of the third leg of this chair that we're trying to sort out. The miscellaneous charges, the consumption charges, and these potential incentives all kind of come together.
All right, so board, what's your pleasure? Do you want to vote on the rates for the meter sizes and then discuss the incentives, or what would you like to do? I'm open to suggestions. Go ahead,
Yeah, I
Julian.
just ask a simple question. How did you come up with some of these numbers? Because I'm looking at, like, some of the numbers are lower than other communities, like under connection fees, under meter installations. I just want to figure out how you come up with these numbers that
yeah.
are different than the other communities.
Can I just interrupt you? We're not talking about this at this point.
Yeah.
We're talking about these numbers right here. So if you don't mind, I'm not going to muddy the waters. We can look at this and ask him those questions later. We're here to really discuss the meter rates and the connection incentives right now. This is going to be tabled for another meeting. So if you can hold off on that, that would be good.
Can I make a couple comments?
Sure.
What it is that Gene is suggesting to you, and you may be recommending. So one of the things that we get asked is, what's the rate going to be? And there's people right now that are sort of waiting for the adoption of your rate so that they can make decisions, because people have projects in the pipeline, or, no pun intended, or they have, they're thinking about lining up. Do they want to connect or not? So although if you decide to delay and not do it tonight, you're causing somebody else to not know what they're going to do, because they need to know what you're going to do before they can make a decision. And it may be even a larger project. If you remember the discussion about the $5.24, that's centered around the household income, and it's centered around the state average, and it's centered around the average use for a house, and it's centered around setting a rate that would be affordable, and setting a rate that would fall into a scope of rates around us. In fact, we would be lower than Hawk next door to us. So in the rate, we also talked about how much we would be putting away in capital reserves and how much of that rate would cover operational costs. It's going to help us get to the next part of the equation, which is to go for RFP for the operator, and to that part about how much money do we put away. And if you remember, I'm just reviewing, that there was a conversation about how do we find a sweet spot for a price that we don't have to come back to revisit because we set it too high or too low, and we wanted it based on what we thought our best guess was rolling into this project of what our customer base would be, that would allow us to very small amount of money that would go into the capital reserve account on the front end, and as we grow the customer base, it would start to go up over the next couple of years. So in other words, we weren't saying set this rate so we can make a lot of profit or put a lot of money away. You are very fortunate to be starting a water system and having zero debt service.
Yes, yes.
Some people roll into a new system and they have to factor in debt service. If you want to use a comparison, you know you have debt service for the public safety complex because you rolled into it.
Yeah.
This is bigger than that and you have no debt service. So that's how that number came up. But because we wanted to be responsible, I think the worst thing you can do is start going up right away or be forced to go down right away. This was the sweet spot that Keith did a lot of work with other communities to figure out where we are. And I think it is a good rate. This right here accomplishes all of that. So I'm not trying to persuade you. I'm recapping what our previous discussions were. And if I've missed any points, because I think John was here for that,
Yeah.
and Keith
Yes.
and Jean was here, and
Yeah.
you were here.
Yes, yeah.
I'd like to encourage you to do that, because I can tell you that there are some customers, rather large ones, in fact, another utility, that wants to entertain the thought of purchasing water from us as a master meter user, and then they would bill their customers. So this would help us to start that discussion.
Go ahead, Greg.
So we have had a lot of discussion about this, and if this is all we're going to be talking about, I feel very comfortable in accepting these. This is not brand new.
Right.
This has been around for a long time. And we had a very long discussion with Keith about this. I feel very comfortable, and I don't sense any reason to delay this.
Okay, good.
I'll make the motion to
Okay,
accept, I'll
excellent,
make the motion
excellent, thank
to go with the suggested rates that we have set on this document at this point. And I know that we have the, if it ends up a little bit off, we have the power to change it if we need to.
Yes.
So it's not like a do or die number setting right now.
And we
but
need to settle into this, too. Don't forget, we're not going to be changing stuff 6 months down the road, so.
We're not hand tied by
Right,
this.
right. So if the board is in agreement, motion on the floor from Julian and a second from Greg. So if there's no more further discussion, Jay, go ahead.
So this is strictly for the rates and has nothing to do with
Yes,
the connection?
that's correct. That's correct. Yeah, so we're going to do this in baby steps, and the stuff that we can do as soon as we can is going to help Mark and also Jean. Go ahead.
I just want to point out, it's just these rates up on the board.
Right,
It's not these other.
right.
facilities.
That's another discussion for another meeting, exactly. Okay, so you guys understand that, right? Because I want to look at this stuff, too. I don't remember it. So if there is no further discussion, I'm going to take a vote on accepting those rates. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? All right, that motion to accept the rates carries 5-0-0. Now, do you all want to get into a discussion with the incentives? Because I don't think this is just going to be a straight vote. I think we need to talk about this. So would you like to do that tonight, and that will move things a little bit more forward? Yeah, Jay?
And I brought this up at a prior meeting, but my concern is the installation and trying to make it reasonable for people to do the installation to connect to the system. And I know we talked about possibly a bond with the state or some type of,
Yes.
so I really like that to be part of this whole plan. I'm not sure what exactly we need to do as far as we need to put forth a warrant article. I
Yes,
understand.
yes, yes.
To get this bonding
Yes,
approved.
yes.
So that we can make it somewhat reasonable for people to connect.
I think at our last
Finance it over a period of time, potentially.
meeting, I think, was it you, Attorney Radigan, that says as long as we put no extra taxes on the warrant, people will vote for it? I can't remember who said that, but.
I think he said
I
so.
did say that.
Yeah, you did say that. So I believe does it need 3/5 of a vote of the town vote, or
Well,
two-thirds?
Your bond needs 60%.
60%, all right, so
SB
3/5.
2.
So even though the whole town votes on that, not everyone will, quote, pay for it. It's only the people who use it. It's like a line of credit that you take out on your house when you wanted to put a deck on or something.
With the caveat that it's up to you.
Yeah.
If you wanted to have a percentage of the repayment of the bond on taxpayers, you can allocate it. 80% on the water users and 20% on the taxpayers. I'm just saying, you can.
Yeah.
Some communities
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
It's your decision if you want to make it 100% on the water system. That's up to you.
Yeah,
I just
so-
think in our previous discussions, we were in agreement.
It should be water
that we would
users.
Not
Yeah.
burden the taxpayer whatsoever.
Right.
And this, what you're talking about now is a bond to help people to connect, so there'd be no
Exactly.
reason to actually ask the taxpayers, but
Exactly,
just for
exactly.
clarification, you have to be clear on what the purpose is. So if it's going to be 100% on
Yep.
the water users, but see, in this case, the bond would be a generic bond for a certain amount that can be accessed by the people that want to connect. They would be agreeing to pay an enhanced charge on their water bill, which would be financing their connection over a period of time, and it would not be on the backs of the other water users.
Right, right. So
Specific to them.
we would need all those little permutations and combinations of what the bond information is beforehand, but that is definitely, I put that on our schedule for the board for discussion for warrants. So I think absolutely, I think we're all in agreement on that we will do everything we can to support the citizens.
Do we have other options beside a bond to help with that? If there's no bond option, or is that our only option?
Well, that's what these
There was
incentives
a
are for
community, was
too,
it
right?
Rochester, that did something different that Keith brought up, that they did something to finance?
Very similar, they did the same thing.
Same thing. Okay.
Right. Right, and we have between now and the end of the year to explore other options as well. I think this particular, the connection incentives, this is to get our initial people on board and to make sure that we're well within our starting point to get potable water here. So I think it's my understanding from talking to you guys and from listening to other meetings that the only issue that we were kind of discussing and need to further discuss is the first 40,000 gallons after the MTBE residential. We had discussed the possibility that there would not be 40,000 gallons left because the contaminated sites are increasing, so we may have less and less gallons available to do that with. Am I recalling that correct, board? So I think you brought it up. Am I not saying it right?
Is it 40? No, the amount that you,
No, supposedly with the 61 MTBE sites, there would have technically or theoretically been 40,000 gallons left over after the first 100,000 that we paid for.
that's why I was confused.
So how do you guys, do you want to lower that? Do you want to just say it so that it's any leftover gallons, or how would you like to approach that? Go ahead, Julian, because I know you had some.
I'd like to have some incentive, but I think there needs to be a safety margin there, because we still have an unknown of who else is going to get added to that list. And if we
Right.
commit to giving the whole 40,000 and another 20,000 shows up somewhere, then
Right.
we've kind of overcommitted
Right.
ourselves.
So-
But we do need to have some kind of incentive as
So
well.
my suggestion would be is any leftover gallons after MTBE is taken care of would be used as an incentive on a first-come, first-served basis. Is that within the law to do that, or would that fix everything?
I think, does the MTBE have to, for connectors, have to go to a specific purpose only?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
I
yeah.
think that
Because that might be the constraint.
So the way I see it, and please, Mark, you've been closer to this when it was developed, but as I see it, the state has purchased 100,000
Right,
gallons of
right.
capacity for the express purpose of providing potable water to MTB-contaminated properties. They are still looking for contaminated properties. They haven't exhausted their search. We came up with 40,000 gallons is what we thought would be a safe amount to give away, if you will, because it seems unlikely right now that you're going to be anywhere near using 60,000. If you've got 100 and you're going to say I'm going to use 40 for incentives, and maybe I'm going to keep some for myself because you've got schools, you've got public facilities you may want as well. Your amount is unknown, granted, because the state has not finished their testing.
Right.
But our analysis, to the 61 that we have been looking at, grown now, but I think we were only up around 30,000 gallons.
But I think we're up to 81 properties.
Now we're up to 81.
Right, so how does that
I don't know
affect
what they
this?
all are yet.
Yeah,
I'm a little,
So it's,
that's what we're concerned about, I guess, yeah.
we're on the right track. I think what you need to think of is setting some date whereby you say, okay, we have reached our better estimate and knowledge of what MTB commitments are, and then some portion of that you allocate. So it's 40,000 gallons now, or
but Gene, what I heard you say initially was the state purchased that money for a specific purpose, which was for MPD sites.
correct.
That we would not use that money, not use that water for incentives. And then you said, after that, you said,
No.
and maybe it's a good thing that you are using these 40,000 gallons after. I don't understand. If they allocated it for those sites and for any future sites, don't we need to have that water available for those sites?
Go ahead, Mark.
So I have a different interpretation, and I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
you're keying off of what's
Yeah.
being said here, which you're not incorrect. The state arbitrarily came up with the 100,000. The portion of the 100,000 that was necessary for the MTBEs is mandated. We don't know where that tank fills up to. We don't know the level. But we're not obligated with the surplus. We're not obligated with the surplus for MTBE because we would have already met it within that gallonage. So we're not restricted by the surplus amount.
But we could allocate a small percentage for any future sites that we expect.
You could,
may show up.
you could.
Like 5,000 gallons or 10,000
Correct.
gallons put
Correct.
aside.
Oh, okay, go ahead, Julian.
Yeah, I'm getting my interpretation of this from everything is they've allocated 100,000 for the MBT sites. Now, if we use 70 and gave 30 to other residents, we would just purchase another $30,000 gallons if we needed it, because as far as the state is concerned, they want to cover up to 100,000 gallons. If we ever exceed the 100,000 gallons of MBT, I'm sure they would approve more. So basically, it's kind of a limit that's set that they're paying for, and if we don't use it right away, we can use it for other things. But if we did give it away, we would have to then compensate that amount that we gave away, because they said $100,000 for MBTE. So they're not going to pay more until it goes over 100,000, right?
So
So,
Yeah.
let me show you how we ended up at 100,000.
all right,
I actually asked for 250,
why am I not surprised?
okay? We got down to 100, okay? But I knew that 100 was more than what we knew at the MTBE sites at the time. I tried to keep it at 250. They wouldn't go for that. But I will tell you that you remember that check was $359,000, correct?
That sounds about right.
$359,000 that they paid Manchester on Plaistow's behalf for that allocation. But we're not restricted. So Julian, Selectman Kieska could be right that if we found something beyond the 100,000, but I think they might go back and say, well, you gave away 20,000 to somebody that wasn't MTBE, so whatever. But I don't think by the numbers that we're seeing right now, unless we find, because let's face it, you can't make somebody test their water because it's private property.
You can't, but as soon as another site gets identified, then
Yeah.
all of a sudden you have this
Yeah.
blossom, of not just one site,
So-
but now you get 20 more.
So,
Let's
all
look
right.
at this. If we went from the original 56
Yeah.
and we doubled it and we went to 112, we'd only be at 80.
So I guess that's the point that I wanted to make, is that after your calculations with the amount that you currently had, if you only have 30,000 that you're using, we have a big cushion that we could safely include a doubling of that amount and perhaps maybe 1.5 times more and still have a cushion. But I hear the board saying that you don't want to just dump all 40 into that little pool. So
Maybe 20 or
are you
30.
are you comfortable with maybe reducing that a little bit? Because you have to balance between getting new customers in,
Right.
and if you lose the incentive, we're not going to get them with the possibility, and I say possibility, that we're going to get more MTBE sites. So I guess my thinking is to adjust that 40,000 a little bit, if you guys if that makes sense to you guys. But, and the only thing we need to decide on is how much do you want to reduce it by? You want to do the first 30, the first 20? I don't know. What do you think?
How many units would 20,000 cover about if you took the calculations on average usage?
We've been talking about 150 gallons per unit for a single family.
So 15,
Per day.
so 15,000 gallons is probably talking 100, at least 100 units, right?
Right, I mean, the thing is, you gotta recognize that, larger commercial properties
Yeah.
might have their rates. And I think, when it comes to these kind of things, that there's safety factors and
Yeah.
issues to think about, or at least be cognizant of, is that when you sell the capacity, when you say you got a property, 2 bedrooms, you got a property, it's 2 bedrooms, you're both getting charged the same amount, you don't know, you might be twice as much water as you.
Yeah.
Sure.
So there's a safety factor built into the estimates. And when you're charging for this capacity, you hopefully are estimating those fees close to what you're actually using, or maybe a little higher. So what you have coming in is maybe a little bit more dollar-wise than what you've actually consumed in your capacity. You will only know that over time. As
Yeah,
the system
yeah,
gets bigger and bigger,
yeah.
you're going to see your averages, you're going to see your weather fluctuations, you're going to see a variety of changes over time that will, you'll see the capacity allocation issues change. And what you might want to do is think sequentially, where you're going to do something now and maybe do something in 6 months from now when you start getting better numbers.
Go ahead, Julian. Yeah.
Well, I'm looking at this, I'd say I would rather have the incentives be more concentrated to residential than to large users like commercial, because they'd use up that allocation pretty quick. So can we do that?
It is. It says residential right
Yeah,
there.
that's
It's
exactly what we're
specified. So you're
talking about.
exactly right.
I just want to
You're
make that
exactly
clear.
right.
That I'm not looking to incentivize large users. I'm looking to incentivize
Right,
the smaller
right.
person who can't maybe, those extra incentives are going to make a difference on the decision.
Okay. So are we of the mind that we're going to just adjust that 40,000 gallon number and then look at the rest of it? Because the rest of it, in my opinion, looks pretty good. They're waiving fees on the MSDC and the SDC fees, and you're getting half off for that. And I truly wish I lived near this water project, because I'm going to be the last one to get it, I think, and I would jump on that. So do you guys want to adjust the 40,000 gallon amount and then discuss the other pieces of it? Go
Yeah,
ahead.
well, I was kind of suggesting going with the 20, because if we go to the 20 and it's successful, and we still have good allocation numbers looking forward, we can always add 10,000 to it.
Yeah, yeah.
We're
that
not,
sounds like-
we're not
yep,
totally hand-tied forever to 20. If we start with the 20, we can raise it after as we see how things are going.
Yeah. John, do
Am I
you
wrong
have
on
any,
that?
any comments from you or
No, I
suggestions
agree
or
with
thoughts or
the 20.
Yeah,
We're not locked
all
into
right.
anything.
And should we have a,
a time frame?
well, no, should we in the future have a number of sites showing up as contaminated? We have allocated a lot of water. We could basically have the system pay for that first year of
Exactly.
water for those sites to hook up.
Exactly.
And that's all of this, the state's taken care of, is
Yeah.
the first year.
Yep,
They
yep.
hook up in the first year's use of water.
Yeah, yeah. So,
No, they're not.
The allocation is into perpetuity.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, it's not a one-year thing. This is you're buying the capacity, you're buying the.
Future capacity.
Oh, all right, okay,
Future
all
use.
right,
The actual consumption has nothing to do with this.
oh, all right, okay.
So
That's a
it's
good point.
basically,
It's
like turning on-
A house uses X.
Yeah,
No, I'm talking about a contaminated site.
Same thing with a contaminated site.
Do they get their water free from now on?
No.
They gotta
No.
pay a bill on what they use.
they're only paying their connection
We're gonna
fee.
Connect them up, they're paying for their allocation into perpetuity like anybody else gets. When you buy allocation, it's for the future.
But they're still paying a price for the water.
They're gonna
Right.
pay for
Yes.
the water
Yep.
that crosses the meter like everybody else.
This is just the MSDC charge is a one-time
Time
charge.
only, right. And so is the
And it basically
SDC
says
charge.
This is your right to the capacity of Manchester Waterworks to sell water. They only have so much water they can deliver,
Right,
and the town of Plaistow can buy only so much.
right.
And that's set forth in your intermunicipal agreement.
Okay,
I
go
think
ahead.
what it clears it up, and it's been in a lot of very previous meetings, is what the allocation fee really is it costs money for Manchester Waterworks to increase their equipment to get that capacity. So what you're doing is you're paying for that equipment to be able to allow them to produce a certain amount of water. So that's what the allocation is
Yeah.
really paying for. So if we start going to 150, we have to buy $50,000 worth of allocation. And that's only what happens. So if we go over 100, then we have to buy that next degree of allocation.
The first
Yeah.
100,000 we get from now on.
Yep.
Yeah.
You own it.
It's up to $5.28 or whatever the number.
Yeah, 543.
And once you buy future capacity, you have that in perpetuity,
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
But at a particular rate.
Yeah.
At a particular
The,
price.
the Manchester Waterworks will continue to have water charges for customers using water. That will be the water usage charge that we just approved.
and a 3%
these
increase,
rates.
yeah,
Really,
yeah.
the benefit of these contaminated sites is they're getting hooked up to the water for free.
Basically,
Yes.
yes, that's right, that's
Exactly.
right. And don't forget,
Their allocation is being paid for, and versus another,
Which really benefits us.
Yes.
It does.
two houses.
Everybody.
That benefits the town.
So two houses, apples to apples.
Right.
One's contaminated, one isn't. The contaminated house gets hooked up, no cost. The contaminated house, the state has paid for their allocation. The other house that's not contaminated has to pay for the hookup and has to pay for the allocation. Then both pay the bill.
Okay, when you say allocation, what do you mean?
Future allocation. A house uses X amount of gallons a year, and that is a charge they pay up front. And that house has reserved that capacity into perpetuity for water
Yeah.
Okay.
allocation.
So that's.
Yeah. That's the one-time fee they pay when they hook up.
No, it's not in that.
no, those are miscellaneous fees and subject to another discussion.
They're
Correct.
getting charged.
Correct, right. And the one thing I left out is that the two houses, again, that the state's gonna pay for the construction to hook them up, it's gonna pay for their, any charges, and anything related to bringing the water connected up to their system.
Right.
But then, once they turn on the faucet and they have the water,
They have to pay for that water.
the water they use.
That's right.
Not for the allocation that they needed to get to that point, versus the other house, they gotta say, you're gonna pay for allocation now from this point forward, and you're gonna get a bill.
And don't forget that this is tiered, so at a certain point in time in 2022, we need to purchase X amount more,
Yeah.
hundreds of gallons up into 2025, we have to do, what, 400,000?
That was our last meeting where we
Yeah.
talked about that if we could buy it in any increment, and that is, we're a pass-through, because we just simply say, if you want to connect and you're going to be this allocation, you need to pay us, so we pay Manchester. It's not put on the backs of the system. It's an
Right.
allocation charge that simply passes through us and reserves that allocation for that customer.
Yeah, and Manchester Waterworks is a business. They have to stay in the black. So they have to be able to buy more equipment or drill more wells to be able to provide the allocation, and that's why they charge that fee.
So basically, let me bring you guys back to square one here, okay? So are we in pretty much agreement that you're comfortable with reducing that to the first 20,000 gallons?
I am.
And then reviewing it after a certain period of time, and if we use that all up, we will review it and maybe allocate more down the road? Are you comfortable with that, guys?
That's a good compromise, and
Yeah?
and it's
All
a
right.
safe route.
All right, so I'm good with that, too. Jay, did you want to say something? I can hear you thinking.
Yep.
No, yes?
No, I'm good. I just, I was looking at the 81 sites, averaging 150 gallons a day, right? So that's for, we'll just say 1 month, that's 364,000 gallons.
No, this is a per-day rate.
So, right, I was just averaging out, I was just trying to see what the total per month was, so.
It doesn't matter.
40
And
hours
there's,
Per day.
this, this 61 is what we've already kind of analyzed, and some of those have, multi, units, there's some condominiums there, Westville Road, apartments, I should say, and some of them, are much bigger than one unit. So the number of connections may be 61 or 82 at this point, but within those numbers are much, much more.
Much larger number of
Right,
actual
right.
water users.
Right,
I mean,
okay.
I think we had one connection, it's equivalent to about 25 or 28 or something like that, I forget the numbers. We had all that in your presentations. If you've got your books, you could probably flip to those.
Review it, yeah, all right.
Earlier ones, I don't have those numbers memorized, but we haven't dived into the details of the new numbers that have come, there's 20 some odd new properties that have been identified, and we have not reached out to them yet.
But we still have had a cushion. I think there's a general consensus that you guys are comfortable with changing that to 20,000 gallons per day. So can we look at the rest of this before, because I think when we put the motion on the floor, we have to look at the whole picture of the connection incentives. So if we change that, what about the rest of it where the, I keep wanting to say MSDS, but it's not, but the SDC, that charge
MSDC.
basically brings everybody up to par as far as what the users would pay. So we're looking at a reduction in those fees of 50% residential, 25% commercial. Same thing with the connection fees, which is huge, in my opinion. That's a great incentive, and they're going to waive the SDC fees as well. So are you guys comfortable with those incentives? Those are tremendous, I think, and it's probably not going to hurt the town. We'll be able to absorb those costs quite easily based on the gallon per day charge that we were looking at. So what do you guys think about that? I think we're going to have water, our users here sooner than later. I think it's going to be great. I don't know, what are your thoughts? Does anybody have any thoughts? Are you comfortable with that, or? And it's, I believe it's what for the, we can put a time limit on that, is what is it, the first year?
I was going to recommend that
Yeah,
you do talk
can we do
about that. As, mentioned earlier, you can change this at any time.
Start the clock ticking,
I
yeah.
think that it's helpful to set a date where this will be good.
Okay.
The offer's good to people, let them know. If you extend that date in the future, or if you extend the gallonage that's available for incentives, you don't really, I think, suffer from that. But getting the word out that these incentives exist. I had someone ask me today at the groundbreaking about their daughter owns a property that was tested. It's good, clean water, but he still wants to get on.
Yeah,
And he wants
yeah.
to know how to do it.
Yeah, excellent.
And, I didn't have an answer, but I told him about tonight's meeting.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think people are out there that are.
They're champing at the bit, I think.
And you'll be able to judge. I think you're going to learn a lot, just how quickly people come on board or not.
Go ahead, Jay.
So as far as setting this date, would the date start today, or would we set it as soon as the system comes online? So if we were to say 1 year from the system comes online, or 1 year from today, we would keep these incentives in place? Or is that up to our discretion?
Yeah,
I
it
think
is.
it's entirely
Yeah.
up to your
Yep,
discretion.
it is.
I think it would be helpful to, I would recommend doing it
Sooner than later, yeah.
immediately. Doesn't have to be immediate. I mean, it could be August 1st, September 1st, whatever, but I think sooner is helpful because it'll give us a good understanding of what we're going to see happening in the spring when we start hooking up.
This is for each user hooking up to the water system for 12 months. So it's
Yes.
going to be all staggered as people coming into this.
Right.
As long as they're within the incentive period, what have we set it for?
You want to do some, I think, PR to get the word out. And you may want to say, effective September 1st, come in with your application, first come, first serve. I wouldn't just do
Exactly.
it where only the people who are in the know. I would, do it broadly so that it's a future date.
So let me just offer a suggestion. If we know when the first user is going to be hooked up to the water, and we basically let the incentive die 12 months after that, that would give, we could actually have the incentive start right now, and 12 months after the first water user is hooked up.
Yeah, we should set a time limit.
Well, you know what, we don't have crystal balls, so we really can't tell when that's going to be. So how about Plan B is we establish a 12-month period, as Jean suggested, either August 1st or September 1st for one calendar year. You guys can always adjust that next year.
Yeah.
So you can extend it, or,
They want to advertise it. They want to
Yeah,
advertise.
so
Yeah,
for a
woo-hoo,
year
let's
from,
do
a year
it,
from
yeah.
now, and we can extend it
Yes.
later if we want, depending on how the
Yeah.
construction goes.
and again, time is of the essence, and the sooner we PR and advertise and do this stuff, the more the more information they have as far as, okay, we've got X amount of users online, we only need Y more.
I would just suggest this, and Gene, jump in here because you know more of the technical stuff. I don't think that the water's gonna get turned on here for a year. It would be this time next year. If everything works out perfect, it would be this time next year after the disinfection and after the hookup of all the MTBE sites.
I think we can start a little bit sooner than that, but certainly not before May.
Right.
It's going to be.
So it really doesn't make sense if you go and establish a deadline of a year from today. It's gonna be like right when we're just turning people on.
I'm against that.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about,
So I think your date should be sometime after next June or July. It should be some date after that.
Yeah.
You could say December 31st of next year, and then you review it, because at that point, you'll know what you have for connections. Or you could say, you could put it out a little further. I mean, that's up to you. But I do like the
Yeah,
idea,
all
and I
right.
wanted to
Yeah, wait a
ask
second,
John this
yeah.
question, Attorney Radigan. If we don't put a deadline on it, I personally think it could cause problems
Yeah.
with somebody saying.
Yep.
But you didn't put a deadline on it, and
Right.
you offered an incentive, so now
I want it.
I want it.
Yeah, and I think this thing operates in two levels. One level is people applying and you granting an approval. And then the time period within which they must act on the approval, because you've also got winter, where there's not going to be any construction.
That's true, yeah.
I think you just think through that, and you obviously don't want to lock someone out who's trying to, just because they finally got their bank financing for the project in November, So I think the big thing is, once they have an approval, give them a couple of years to hook up,
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Julian.
so what
Yeah.
I'm thinking, what, are we talking about a time period when they actually hook up, or are we talking about a signed commitment that we want to hook up?
Yeah,
Which are
that's-
two different things.
Yeah.
We want the signed commitment, we're gonna hook up, so that the day you turn it on, they say they're gonna hook up. And if it's somehow enforceable, because the people who says, I'm gonna commit to it, should get the incentive.
The incentive means nothing until they're actually hooked up.
Yeah, but I don't know what the legal part of that is, because we want to make sure the people who sign up first and say, I'm going to commit, I am going to do it, which is what we're looking for.
Right, because what you really need are users.
Yeah.
We need those users, and
Yes.
we want the people to obligate themselves ahead of time so that we have the users on day one. And so it's not really an incentive if you wait till after, because at that point, you need the users.
Okay, Jean, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, as much as I'd like to roll this out sooner than later, it comes to mind that if you're going to be rolling out some kind of loan program for
Oh,
people
yeah,
to
yeah,
actually
yeah.
finance it, which is contingent on a vote in March,
Yep.
it might be best to do this all at the same time. Roll out, we can have this documented. If you really want to do something like this, I think there are questions like good questions that came up today. When does it start? When does it stop? When do you have to make the commitment? What's the commitment look like? Application processes, is it 40,000, 20,000, whatever. I think you can get to some of those answers tonight, but there may be some benefit to rolling out a comprehensive program that includes financing answers.
Good point, good
and-
point.
And documentation, exactly how this is going to work. Just a thought.
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Something that occurred to me, thinking about what someone could do that could tie your hands behind your back without you even knowing it, they come in and comply with the application process, and then they reserve it through your process or make a claim to it, and then they sell it to somebody else, or they game the system, and they've tied up that allocation. That's what my fear is.
Yeah, well,
But that-
obviously, this is not transferable.
Right.
And we do that all the time
Right.
in ordinances. When you get a right like that, they're not transferable.
Yeah, so that takes care of that
And
problem.
if you make a commitment and then you back out of it, is there a penalty?
Well, you know
So
what,
someone
I think,
doesn't
I
just
think we're
commit
get-
and
we're
then doesn't really
getting,
follow
we're
through.
getting
Right.
caught up in the weeds and the pucker brush, guys. I need to bring you back into what we're originally going to
Yeah.
vote for. So we're looking at just the connection incentives at this point to vote on for tonight. I think we've agreed that there's 20,000 gallons a day is a reasonable thing, and all I'm asking you to do is to consider the rest of the fees that are waived, or 50% and 25%. So if we can all agree that that connection incentive piece looks good, we can vote on that, and then the third phase of it is we can take our little bit of time to work on the other piece of it that Jean and Mark and John suggested with regards to time frames and all the other little bits and pieces that need to be involved in that piece of it. Does that sound
Yeah.
logical and agreeable, and it gives you guys time to think about it?
I'll make the motion to do the connection incentives, changing the 40,000 gallons per day to 20,000 gallons per day.
All right, is everybody comfortable with the 50%, 25%, and all that other happy stuff there? Yes, I'm getting yeses. All right, so who's going to second that vote? Thank you, John. All right, so if there's no more further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed and abstained, so that motion carries 5002. You guys are making me work way
So-
too hard.
So to be clear, we have to have a plan by voting March, what the whole plan's going to be.
Yes.
Provided the incentive, or the
Including the loan.
loan part has to be
Yeah, the
approved.
loan is the critical piece of it, and we have a few months to work on the language for the warrant, and I know Greg Colby will be spectacular at doing that because he's very good at that. But in the meantime, we have a couple of months to work on, okay, what else do we need to work on and want to work on with regards to timeframes and commitments for people and that type of thing. But at least this gives people some meat to go home with to say, okay, this is carved in stone at this point, so that gives me a little bit more incentive to move forward with my decision.
I'm going to tell you, I'll be a salesman now. I'm going to put a little salesmanship on here.
Wait,
I just says.
Wait, Greg, go ahead.
It's, because you're looking at, the consumption charge is $5.24 per 100 cubic feet, and it's $7 per 1,000 gallons. That's only 0.7 cents
Yep,
per gallon.
That's what
And that's
what
clean
Mark
water,
said.
you don't have to
That's what Mark
filter or
said.
anything.
Exactly, what a
So,
deal.
I
What
mean, this is a really good deal to get water here.
Yep, go ahead, Greg.
My concern is when this gets out, how does the public interpret this? There's an incentive, well, what does it mean for me to have this incentive? What do I have to do? And we don't have an answer for you right now.
But they can think about it just as we are going to think about how this is going to work. You can't just dump all of this stuff in all at once. We do have to think about it. It has to be a process, and we have to integrate them really carefully so that we don't make any major messes.
Missing the point. The point I'm saying is that once you release this to the public without having the go-along dates and facts, it's a misnomer. It's not what they think it's going to be. They don't, because we don't even know what it is. We don't even know how long this incentive period is going to last, when we have to sign up for it, when you're going to be connected to it.
All right.
We don't know those things.
So,
So now I look at this as a new customer and say, oh, they're going to do some incentives.
okay, so let me interject, and I think the last thing that I wanted to talk to you all about is when our next meeting is going to be. Now, technically, according to our schedule, our next water meeting was scheduled for August 31st. It's about a month away. So that water meeting would be the meeting that we would discuss and firm up all of these questions that you're raising. And I don't think people are going to be freaking out if they have to wait a month for stuff. God knows they've waited 40 years for this. They can wait 30 days more. But is that agreeable to you guys, that we need to be prepared to discuss these timeframes and these types of things? But the only thing is August 31st too far away, or what do you think, Gene?
I think it's fine. We can do that, a lot of work by then, and I think,
right.
I didn't catch the exact wording of the motion, but to address your point, the motion could be, directing us to go back and present a detailed proposal along these lines to you for discussion on the 31st. You don't necessarily adopt these numbers, but we can have a lot more information for you about the details, the weeds, so to speak, of what it would look like. And we can maybe even update our estimates for capacity.
MTBE,
One thing
yeah.
we haven't really estimated is your, potential giveaway to yourself here in the municipal connections. What are those going to be? What is your water use here in this building and other buildings? And so I think the 31st would be a good opportunity for us to bring back to you a detailed proposal along these lines for you to consider.
And would you also have more firm numbers on the MTBE sites and numbers and estimates and that stuff as
I think we can get a little bit of
well?
homework done. I don't
All
know
right.
how much further we'll be on that, but we will
Okay.
be able to start looking at least the additional 20 or so that have come up in the
Now,
last few months.
can you tell us, when are the RFPs going out for the vendors to be digging up the streets and putting water pipes in and all that other happy stuff? Is that going out shortly?
Tomorrow at 2 o'clock, we'll be opening bids for
Oh.
contract P1.
Okay.
P1 refers to the
yeah,
3
the water
miles or
mains.
so of water main
Okay.
that Keith mentioned in his
All right,
talk.
good.
That bid opening tomorrow, if the prices come in well, and we think that there's some good competitive interest right now, with those prices in hand, it usually takes, a few weeks at least to get things vetted through the process, get state approval to award a contract. With contract award, then there's a little bit of time before they're actually digging in the street because they've got to get submittals and
So we're looking
line
at
up.
September?
But I think they'll
Yeah.
be probably starting to dig in August.
You were talking about like digging
Second.
down Sweet Hill Road?
Yeah.
Hello?
Okay. Answer my question already.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Hi. It is at the town hall, but if you'd like to ask us a question, we can put you on speaker and we'd be pleased to answer the question for you if we can.
Actually, what I would like, the question I'd like to ask is, when were they gonna tell us?
I just disconnected him. No,
It's Jim Beck again.
no, it isn't. Hi, Sir, I'm gonna put you on speakerphone. The public hearing was announced at our town website, and it was already announced a week ago. So I'm sorry that you missed it, but it is.
What was it on the website?
It was on the town hall website, and I believe, and it's being filmed right now. So I think if you go on channels 23 or 17. Hopefully tomorrow it will be on the television as well. And it will certainly be on our town website under the Selectmen's meeting notes, hopefully. Did you have a question that you needed to ask us, though?
Probably have a lot of questions, but I would, it said originally on the website that they were gonna have it at 5 o'clock. And we went out to go to the 5 o'clock meeting. We live right next door to the tower. We went over, we looked outside, said, wait a minute, something's going on over there. So we walked over there and you're having this ceremony. And then we came back, they told us that the public hearing was gonna be at 6:30 at the town hall.
Correct. That's correct, sir.
We waited, went back and had something to eat, and we went down to the town hall, and the place was locked right up tight.
You didn't ring the doorbell, apparently, because we've been here since 6 o'clock.
They put something on the door, or put it's a public hearing. I assume
ye-
something to meet a requirement for a public hearing.
Well, I believe we did do that by law, and I'm very sorry that you weren't able to get into the building and we weren't aware that you were outside because no one rang the doorbell. Can we send you, can we?
Normally, going to a public hearing, a posted public hearing, you don't ring the doorbell to get in. Now, I understand there's a problem with this virus deal, but they still should have put something on the door to tell you what was going on. Or something that it had been changed.
Yeah.
The website said it was right on there. It said 6:30 at night.
Yep, and
Public hearing.
that's exactly what we did, and that's exactly where we are. So I'm sorry that there was a mix-up there. Is there something that I can send you as far as information on the draft ordinance or anything that you'd like to have for that?
I would like to know when you're going to have the public hearing.
We had it, sir. We already had it today, and we closed the public hearing at 7 o'clock.
Pierre's question.
Well, okay, that's fine. I would challenge that and say there was no public hearing.
All right, that's certainly your right too, sir. Is there anything that we can help you with in the meantime?
Like Pierre's question.
I don't know what it is, but I will be in contact with my selectmen and see what's going on.
Okay, thank you, sir.
No, you sound like very accommodating. When you have a public hearing, you advertise it, then you don't tell people that they can't get into it. That's wrong. It needs to be changed. You need to do something. There were people that went down there that could not get in, didn't know you were going to have it on television. Okay? It wasn't advertised that way. In a public hearing, generally it's posted.
Well, you make some excellent points, and from now on in the future, we will make sure that our town hall is open. We do have to abide by the state's social distancing and all the other COVID-19 things, but you bring up some excellent points, and we will try to make sure that things are better for our next public hearing. So thank you for your input on that.
And I would assume that this is a non-public hearing.
No, this is a public hearing, sir. This is public.
I don't know whether you're required by law to have a public hearing or not, but if you are, that did not meet the requirements of a legal public hearing.
Well,
And anybody would know that, and your town manager should certainly know it.
Sir, with all due respect, with all due respect, I think we have complied with the letter of the law, and I'm going to have to say thank you for your input, and I'm going to let you go. So you have a good night.
Well,
I don't know what else we could have done.
I would have been willing to listen to a question if you had one.
Well, he didn't want to have I don't think he had a question. I think he just had a bunch of complaints, but
Okay.
he's going to call me back, but I'm not going to answer it.
I'd be willing to, even though the public hearing is over, I would be willing to hear the question.
He didn't have a question, Julian.
Okay. Yeah, I know.
He didn't have a question. I think it's just a misunderstanding, a misinterpretation. We've done these public hearings years and years and years.
a sign in the door?
Same. So, I mean, I know it was posted, I know it's up on the board, and I know it was posted on TV, so I'm not sure what more we could do. But, he does make a good point. Next time, we'll make sure that the door is open downstairs. That's a good idea.
We'll make sure there's actually a
Yeah,
large
yep,
sign.
so that's a good point.
A
That
large
is a good
sign.
point,
We'll,
yeah.
we'll do better.
Yes.
I just checked with Attorney Rowdy. Under the governor's emergency order, public hearings and to conduct business was allowed for people to call in and participate.
Right.
We have complied with that part of the emergency order, which was the number on the screen, and as you waited.
Clearly, yeah.
And as Jim Peck called in
Yes.
during that hearing.
Yes.
He had a chance to do it.
Yes.
So we did comply with
I agree.
the governor's emergency order.
I think this gentleman may have been a little bit confused as to what the protocols were and maybe wanted to physically be here, but be that as it may, we
Welcome
definitely
to
did
my
comply with the law, yes. And mine by proxy, apparently. So next time this phone rings, I'm going to give it to you. All right, so where were we? We got all discombobulated here. So we were able to approve the connections. You're going to give us a little bit more information, and we were tentatively going to reschedule another water meeting, a water workshop for August 31st. Is that correct? And we'll have a little bit more information for us to work with. So we're going to work through these decisions little by little to make sure we're doing things properly, and we've been thoroughly discussed and put together, because this has to be right. We have to do this right out of the box, so we have to be careful, I think. So if there are no other comments or issues that we need to discuss at this water meeting, I am going to adjourn the meeting. If you guys are all set with that, are you comfortable with that, or do we need to talk about anything else?
When do we, this will be at the next meeting?
This is going to be discussed at the next meeting, along with the timeframes to do the incentives and some other information. Go ahead, Jean, before I adjourn. Okay.
We had sent out requests to various firms, many as we could think of, to send us letters of interest and qualifications. We have received four, I think it was, and we're ready to take the next step. I just wanted you to know that we have that information at this point. We haven't finalized what the next step would be. I think given the small number, we would invite them most likely to come and interview with us and talk about how they would want to meet our needs. And schedule-wise, we had originally talked about having contract operations come on as early as September, late September. Given that the pump station and other things have slowed down, and with the winter upon us, we would push that out till at least after the first of the year, because there really won't be much for them to do. One of the first tasks of the contract operations firm is going to be engaging in the process of flushing, disinfecting the lines, and bringing in potable water. And so until there's potable water, they're really not quite ready to get rolling. So just wanted to give you an update.
All right.
Important part we haven't forgotten about, but we will be looking to work towards the selection soon.
And nothing, the potable water doesn't happen until a pump house is done, correct? So are we on track with moving that project forward?
Yes, I think we are.
Okay.
Still struggling a bit to address some of the permitting issues. We have had the site survey, we have had geotechnical work done, the soils are good. We are in a floodway, a floodplain. It's a wet area. We are trying to resolve a few permitting questions about that, whether it's a major application or minor, and whether there might be mitigation required for the impacts. But nothing earth-shaking right now, and we think we're still good.
All right. Go ahead,
I have a
Julian.
question on the schedule is, about when is it expected that the water will be available up to the pump station from the Atkinson side? Which would be the point at which you could potentially put water on.
Close to the end of the year.
Right.
A little bit of that depends on the precise schedule of the contractor to say when water would be there. We are prioritizing only one thing with this contract for the water mains, and that is running the line up Sweet Hill Road. The other lines, we've not identified a priority, but we want it up to Sweet Hill Road first by the fall, so that they can bring fire water, not potable water, up for the testing and use of the tank construction. The other lines, really not much sense to prioritize them until we have a pump station.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
we
yeah.
will get that work done this fall and possibly into the winter and spring.
Well, I think my question was, our schedule will still be dependent on when the Atkinson side of the project gets done. In other words, all the other towns that it goes through. I just wanted to know if they
That's-
were on schedule.
that
That's
part-
already
Yeah,
done.
they're all set. Yeah,
It's
they're all
already
set.
done?
All
Yep,
done.
yep,
So
yep.
Part. I mean, they're sending water now, all the way down through Salem and everything, not in the quantities that they expect yet. The quantity for phase one of this whole regional thing is reliant on Manchester Road Pump Station in Derry. That's supposedly being operational mid-August.
So the holdup is strictly when we're done with our side of the work, we could potentially turn it on.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
We are part of first phase,
All right.
and we have an allocation of a daily flow up to 250,000 gallons a day. We're going to be nowhere near that type of flow per day, but that's part of phase one. So, as Gene said, it's the flow coming from Manchester through the other communities that they're working on right now. And we were part of a meeting recently where they're trying to get up to that kind of number, but
Yeah, they're not close.
we're inconsequential in the big number, because we don't need that much. But with the road over there at Bryant Woods to the pump house is the only section of pipe that needs to be put in to get it to the Plaistow line. But then there's construction in Plaistow. So it's going to be at the Plaistow line, somewhat available like soon,
End of the year, yeah.
soon.
Yeah, and Hawk needs to turn over to from the wells that are they don't use a contamination disinfection process. That, they may get too technical. They have some work to do. They can't do that work until they get the capacity they need on a reliable basis, which means middle August for their Manchester Road Station. When they get that, Hawk can switch over to chlorination for disinfection. That's not going to take them long. They just have to do that, and it might take another couple of months.
All right.
And then they'll be completely off of their prior system.
So are we going to try to get all our pipes in before the winter? No?
No, we're not going to be able to. Yeah, you're not going to be able to.
Some.
Yeah. This is going to flow as well as it flows. I mean, we can't pull this any more, I guess, than we already are. Basically, we're just going to have to let it process, right?
Yep, I just wanted to get a feeling on how where we
Yeah.
were going.
All right. So if nobody else has any questions, I'm going to adjourn this meeting at 8:04 p.m. Thank you all for coming, and you all have a good night.